The city was just waking up. Frost clung stubbornly to the edges of parked cars, the kind of frost you have to scrape in thin, stubborn layers before you can even see through the windshield. It was one of those cold February mornings when even the pigeons seem reluctant to move. Inside a sleek, black Mercedes Maybach, Charles Whitman sat in the back seat, his leather gloves folded neatly on his lap, his phone screen glowing faintly in the dim light. He was scrolling through emails, investment proposals, hotel acquisition offers, high-end real estate listings in New York and London. To anyone else, Charles was the picture of success. At 52 years old, he had built a business empire worth over $500 million. His name carried weight in luxury property circles. He owned multiple mansions, a yacht docked in Monaco, and more penthouse apartments than he could count without checking his portfolio. And yet, he was known by a nickname that had followed him for 2 decades, the Ice King. The name wasn't born from admiration, but from reputation. People said Charles could evict a family on Christmas morning without losing a minute of sleep. That if you couldn't pay your rent on time, you weren't his problem. Business is business, he always said. Sentiment doesn't pay the bills. Today was supposed to be routine. Just another number in his books. One of his tenants, a woman named Rachel Turner, hadn't paid rent in 6 months. His property manager had urged him to look into her situation before making a decision. Charles ignored it. In his mind, compassion was a slippery slope. But something, maybe pride, maybe irritation, made him decide to handle this one personally. So here he was, riding into a part of the city where the sidewalks were cracked, the paint on houses peeled in strips, and the streetlights buzzed faintly because they hadn't been replaced in years. The Mercedes slowed in front of a 2-story building with a faded blue door. The small patch of grass in the front yard was dry and yellow, dotted with a couple of forgotten toys. A child's bike leaned against the porch, one handlebar missing its rubber grip. Charles stepped out, his polished black shoes crunching against the frostbitten ground. His driver stayed in the car while Charles climbed the porch steps and knocked on the door, 3 sharp, businesslike raps. It opened slowly. Rachel stood there. She was in her late 30s, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Her sweater had a tear near the shoulder. Behind her, he could see the faint outlines of a cramped living room, a second-hand couch, mismatched chairs, and walls decorated with children's drawings taped up like they were priceless paintings. "Mr. Whitman," Rachel said, her voice tight. I didn't think you'd come in person." Charles stepped inside without asking. He glanced around. The place smelled faintly of coffee and laundry detergent. He noticed a pile of neatly folded clothes stacked on the dining table, probably waiting for a drawer that didn't have room. "I've heard all the excuses," Charles said flatly. "You've been 6 months behind. My patience, and the lease, have run out." Rachel swallowed hard. "Please. I've been looking for work. My husband, he passed away last year. I've been trying to take care of the girls and..." He held up a hand. "I'm not here for a story. I'm here for a solution. And if there isn't one, you need to vacate." And that's when it happened. From the hallway, 2 little girls appeared. One was maybe 8 years old, with tangled brown hair in 2 messy braids. The other was younger, holding a worn-out teddy bear missing an ear. They looked at him with eyes far too big for their small faces. The older girl stepped forward first. "Please, mister," she said softly, "don't make mommy leave. It's almost my sister's birthday, and she's never had a cake before." Charles blinked. He had been expecting pleading from the mother, maybe anger, but not this. Not a child's voice asking for something so small, so simple. The younger girl hugged her teddy bear tightly, then took a small, brave step forward. "You can have Mr. Buttons," she said. "He's the best thing we have. Maybe it can pay for the house." For a moment, Charles felt like the room had tilted. A broken teddy bear. offered like it was gold. He wanted to brush it off, to tell them this wasn't how the world worked. But something in his chest shifted. He hadn't thought about his own childhood in years, but now, uninvited, memories crept in, of cold winters when his mother skipped meals so he could eat, of the time their landlord banged on the door, threatening eviction, and he had stood there at 10 years old, clutching his own threadbare toy because it was the only thing he owned. He swallowed hard. "When's your birthday?" he asked the younger girl. "Saturday," she whispered. Charles turned to Rachel. "All right. I'm not evicting you. Not now." Rachel stared at him like she hadn't heard right. What? "You have 3 months, Charles said firmly. Use it. Find work. And," he hesitated, "there will be a cake on Saturday." 3 days later. Charles was back at the little blue door, this time with a large pink and white cake, candles, and 3 wrapped boxes. He didn't understand why he'd done it. Part of him thought he was wasting his time. But when the girls opened the door, their eyes lit up like Christmas morning. They squealed, they hugged him, they danced in circles around the cake. Rachel invited him in. He intended to drop the cake and leave, but somehow he stayed. He listened as Rachel talked about her dream of one day owning a small bakery. He learned the older girl loved drawing and the younger wanted to be a nurse. When he left that night, he sat in his car longer than he meant to, staring at his reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, he wondered. Had I been wrong all this time? 3 months later. Rachel had a job at a local diner. She was catching up on rent. Charles had quietly covered her arrears without her knowing, and had made a few phone calls to get her into a community baking program. One sunny afternoon, as he left the building, the older girl came running after him. She handed him a folded piece of paper. "It's for you," she said. Inside was a crayon drawing of him standing in front of their little blue house, smiling. The words, written in shaky letters, read, "Thank you for giving us a home." Charles felt something break open in him, the kind of break that doesn't destroy you, but sets you free. He was still a businessman. Still successful. But he was no longer the Ice King. In the years that followed, he started a program to help struggling single parents get back on their feet. Quietly. No publicity. No press. And every February, he returned to that little blue door, cake in hand, because it reminded him of the day 2 little girls melted a heart he thought was frozen forever. True wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you can give, and by the hearts you choose to change along the way.